this is not getting discussed on the mainstream media. Not only are they wrong legally, but the fact that they would do this is outrageous. This is an overreaction and really nonsense. How would you react if this was your son or your daughter? It's the offense of knowing the truth. It's the offense of having an alternate worldview. Saying God bless you, someone, is not a violation of the law.
Hey, welcome to the broadcast, everyone. We're thrilled that our Facebook and Periscope audience are here. Thrilled that you all are listening to us on radio across the country, and also thrilled that our television audiences are here as well. We have been talking about the situation with Islamic indoctrination in the schools. We're going to continue that conversation. But there's been an interesting development. That is Ben Carson, who is a neurosurgeon from Johns Hopkins running for president. He's scoring about number 2 right now in the polls, made a statement. Let me play it for everybody right now.
If, for instance, you believe in a theocracy, I don't care if you're a Christian. If you're a Christian and you're running for president and you want to make this into a theocracy, I'm not going to support you. I'm not going to advocate you being the president.
He's getting a lot of flack for that comment, but let me give you some interesting information, folks. I wrote a book called Sharia in America a couple of years ago. When a devout Muslim tells you that Sharia law is consistent with the United States Constitution, here's what they mean. They know that the Constitution can be amended. So what Ben Carson said about Sharia and the Constitution is correct, legally speaking. Sharia is a universal law within Islam. It governs worldwide affairs. It's global in scope. It's not subject to a nation state. We want your comments and feedback on Logan. Our Facebook and Periscope audiences are here as well.
That's right. It's a great way to interact with the show. Not only can you just listen, you can actually be a part of the conversation. Watch the show live broadcast right now. Our broadcast now, you're seeing the feed from our television studio. So you see a little bit different today.
Yep.
It's pretty interesting to be a part of it, but we're still taking your questions or comments through Facebook and Periscope. Just go to facebook.com/Jay Sekulow and then go to Periscope, search for Jay Sekulow. We're broadcasting live right there, right now.
You know, Jordan, also, of course, there's a no oath provision of the United States Constitution. There's not a religious test in the Constitution.
Well, that's right. Article 6 is clear that there's no religious test to those who hold office. So anyone of any faith or no faith at all can run. The question, though, being is who is appropriate. Well, that's up to American people and up to each of us, whether you're a presidential candidate or not. And there are some real conflicts when you talk about Sharia law in America. And the ideas that we hear, as you talked about, that somehow Sharia can be compliant, and as you picked up on, that's because the Constitution can be changed. It's a lengthy process, but they understand that, so you can say everything's compliant with it, technically.
Well, that's exactly what they're saying. By the way, the Council for American Islamic Relations is calling for Ben Carson to resign. That's the reason he should not resign. We're going to take your comments, folks. Let me encourage you to do something. We've got the schools around the country on notice that indoctrination in the public schools is not acceptable. Sign the petition. It's growing every day. ACLJ.org or 1-877-989-2255. That's ACLJ.org or 1-877-989-2255. No to indoctrination of Islam in the schools. 877-989-2255.
Imagine your child or grandchild forced to recite the Islamic conversion creed in school. It's happening in Tennessee. Public middle school students are being taught to write, quote, Allah is the only God. Their assignments actually explain how to convert to Islam. It's Islamic indoctrination right here in our schools. It's outrageous and unconstitutional, but it's happening nationwide. Some students are assigned, quote, to pretend you are a Muslim. Others are taught to pray Islamic prayers and practice Islamic rituals. At the ACLJ, we're taking direct action. We're fighting to defend religious freedom in school and aggressively battling to stop Islamic indoctrination. Send a powerful message to these schools today. Sign our petition. Stop Islamic indoctrination in our schools. Call now, 1-877-989-2255, or add your name online, aclj.org.
How significant is the conflict with radical Islam?
Radical Islam intends that all of us live under Sharia law. The enemy is radical Islam.
If Iran gets nuclear weapons, Saudi Arabia will, Egypt will, Turkey, perhaps others.
The moment the Iranians have nuclear weapons, they have a nuclear umbrella over their international terrorist capability.
That is a formula for insecurity.
And I'm telling you, target number one is Israel. The Israelis cannot abide that. It is truly an existential threat.
These 40,000 rockets and missiles on the border with Lebanon could, be sprung and fired against Israel.
The more we have nuclear proliferation in the world, the more the risks are that there will be the availability of nuclear devices, the lethality of which is mind-boggling.
Is there a war going on with Iran right now?
This is the longest ongoing war in the Middle East. From almost day one, the Islamic Republic of Iran tried to obtain a nuclear weapon and tried to export the revolution to proxy jihadist movement in the Middle East, trying to imitate the geniussy in the revolution of Khomeini to other places. And at the same time, the secret services of the United States and Israel declared war on Iran, and this is the clandestine war between these two forces.
Well, right now, Iran is the world's central banker to international terrorism. It funds Hamas, Hezbollah, terrorists in Afghanistan and Iraq and around the world. If you add to existing Iranian activities the capability to deliver nuclear weapons anywhere in the world, you make Iran a world power and a world threat. That's why it is legitimate for the United States, Israel, or others to take action now in self-defense to prevent Iran from continuing to violate its own treaty obligations and obtain nuclear weapons. It's not a desirable alternative, to be sure, but the preemptive use of military force in this case is actually far preferable to the world as it would be once Iran gets nuclear weapons.
All right, so the Council of American Islamic Relations not too happy with Republican presidential candidate Ben Carson because they believe that he should withdraw from the race because of the statement he made saying that Islam is not consistent with the U.S. Constitution, which, by the way, just so you know, I have said as well, because Islamic law, Sharia, is not consistent with the United States Constitution. In fact, on page 34 of our book, I'm going to hold up the book for our Periscope audience and Facebook audience and our television audience. In our book, it's called Sharia in America. We wrote this a couple years ago. A devout Muslim's allegiance to the global Islamic State is inherently in conflict with any oath of allegiance to any earthly authority or state. As discussed, the universal political nature of the Islamic faith mandates that Muslim loyalty lies with the global Islamic State above the nation state in which a Muslim resides. And Jordan, that's just a matter of fact under Sharia law. That's factual.
Yeah, that's right. And so the idea here, again, that there would be some question about allegiance and anyone can run for president of any faith or no faith at all. And so that's not really the issue. The issue is personally, would you be comfortable with someone as president of the United States, as commander-in-chief, leader of the free world, who was a devout Muslim, especially in line with where it seems like modern Islam is today, which is much more, using the term, conservative in the religious world, and with a strict adherence to some kind of interpretation of Sharia law, and that would be very concerning for the commander-in-chief to possess that. But again, the parsing of words very carefully we have to do here, and that's because the amendment process, Article 5 of the Constitution, the Islamic scholars have said, of course we can be compliant. We can be compliant, and that's because the Constitution would have to be changed.
Interestingly, by the way, on our Stop the Islamic Indoctrination in Schools, 189,874 signatures right now. My goal is to get it to 200,000. You could help us get there right now because you're seeing it now in the presidential debates. You're seeing it in the public schools. Tennessee, by the way, they're going to pull up their review process 2 years because of the public outcry on this. 2 years early, which means it starts in January. And the parents, you're going to have something to say about this. When we've sent out a Freedom of Information Act request to all 146 counties in Tennessee, because what we're looking at, based on research that Will did and Joseph, it's not the textbook. It's the application of the teaching description or the lesson plan that's causing the problem. So go to aclj.org or call us at 1-877-989-2255. It's aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. A lot of comments coming in via Facebook and Twitter as well.
That's right. Comments are pouring in, a lot of them with support of Dr. Carson and his point of view. Way to go. A lot of people are saying, a lot of people say don't back down, don't resign, don't step down from the race right now. There's a lot of people who are just really on his side and saying all these things as well as comments as Islam and Sharia law go hand in hand. How can it not? We have a lot.
Sharia law is Islamic law. It's the global Islamic law.
That's right. We have a lot of calls, too. I think we should go take a call.
Let's do that.
All right, let's go to Jeff, who's calling from Jacksonville, Florida. Jeff, you're on the air.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, how are you today?
Good.
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I'll be succinct and concise and then disconnect. I believe that Sharia law is inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States. I'll just cite two short examples. Women's rights and how non-Muslims would be treated and regarded.
Let me explain on the women's rights. For instance, if a woman testifies in a court, in a Sharia court, her testimony does not, you'd have to have 3 women or 2 women for every man that testifies because they're not given the same weight. So that's part and part. You're absolutely correct on that issue. Equality does not exist under Sharia law. By the way, here's a definition of Sharia law so we understand what we're talking about. It's the body of Islamic law. The term means way or path. It's the legal framework with which public and some private aspects of life are regulated. It's basically their overriding legal system within Islam. And that's what we're talking about. But women do not have the same status to testify, to go to court, to have certainly there's no equal rights under the law.
That's right. We just see that. I mean, it's one of those things that's very odd because it's almost this tolerance of the intolerant that comes up a lot. What is one of the most, what do people talk about mostly when it comes to liberalisms or being a Democrat is women's rights and all these things. But when it comes down to this situation, it's always on the side of Islam, which doesn't make any sense when it comes to the fact that if you're fighting for all of these, liberalisms, essentially, how is the fact that this is the most ultimate in going against that, most ultimate in being intolerant towards just people of a different gender, says a lot.
Jordan, we've done an analysis of the law, and I mean, we've Logan and I were just talking about as it relates to women, but it goes further than that. I mean, the penalties aspect of this are not compliant with the United States Constitution unless amended.
That's right. And so you've got, this situation where when you look at the U.S. Constitution and you look at Sharia law and you look at the way it treats, whether it treats even minority religious groups, people of different religious faiths, whether it treats women different than men, and certainly how our Constitution has been corrected to treat all people equally, especially based off race, these kind of changes are what they would have to look to, but it doesn't stop you from saying that it could be compliant, because if you look at the amendment process, that's the truth. Now, you look at even the cruel, unusual punishment, things like that, where we're talking about countries where beheadings are the norm for crimes and cutting off limbs are the norms for even petty crimes, that certainly our Constitution is in conflict today with where Sharia law is in 2015.
We have a pamphlet, I'm going to get it during the break here, that actually has a chart of what's different when we look at the various ones. I'm going to get that pulled for everyone so you know exactly what we're talking about. Folks, again, let me tell you where we need your help also. We've got real momentum on the situation with stopping Islamic indoctrination in the schools. We're at 189,898 signatures to this petition. We've got the schools in Tennessee reacting. We're going to go state by state on this. We could use your help. Go to aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255 and sign that petition. I encourage you to do it. aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255.
All right, let's go back to the phones. Haley is calling from Cheyenne, Wyoming. Haley, you're on the air.
Hi, Haley.
Hi there.
Hi, you're on the air.
I just wanted to point out that nobody is trying to make this a national conversion to Islam, and I think it's really important for us to remember, those of us who are Christians, that we need to take a step back and stop being so judgmental.
Well, hold it. I mean, Haley, what are we talking about? Let's kind of, you've got a school system, for instance, in Tennessee, where students, and you got this in Wisconsin, students are told to pretend you're a Muslim, go utilize a prayer rug, recite the Islamic conversion prayer. You've got devout Muslims believe it's a universal conquest. Let me play for you what the CARE spokesperson said, because it's kind of echoing what you're saying, but this is what CARE said about Ben Carson.
The protection of freedom of religion in America is a fundamental principle of our country. So whether you're Christian, you're Jewish, you're Muslim, you're Catholic, you're black, you're brown, you're white, if you are born in this country, if you uphold the Constitution, if you have the vision, if you fit to lead, you can lead irrespective of your faith tradition. Not long ago, some people thought that a Catholic cannot be a president, an African American cannot be a president. They were wrong then, and they are wrong now.
So let me ask you this, Haley. If a candidate was running for public office that said that they believed Sharia law, Islamic law, was compliant with the United States Constitution. And we know that Sharia law means that women, for instance, if you were to testify in court against someone, your vote, your testimony would have to be backed up by multiple other witnesses because you don't have the same value in the court's eyes and in Islamic court's eye. Would you vote for that person?
I think that it's important, no matter what religion you are, just to not let that get in the way.
Well, hold it. I'm asking a really direct question here. Would you vote for someone whose teaching and beliefs are that as a woman, your testimony in a court of law does not carry the same weight as a man's?
I mean, I very well might if they don't try and change their constitution.
Oh, so you would vote for someone? Well, but what if they said, well, they can change the Constitution if they go through a constitutional amendment process? But Haley, I'm being honest with you here, and you're trying to be honest back. You don't really know. You would not support that person for president of the United States.
I wouldn't if they wanted to change it.
Okay, well, if they believe it, of course they want to change it because that's the nature of belief. I appreciate your call, but this is the fundamental problem. And the media is really not casting this in the right way. If they were being honest legally, Jordan here, if they were being honest, they would know it's a very different scenario.
Yeah, that's right. And the truth is the media is not being honest. So it's somewhat reason. This goes to even the issue in Tennessee schools. It's politically correct right now not to tell the truth about Islam and what the tenets of Islam are, and especially the tenets in 2015. Now, this is besides the fact that we see these horrendous terror attacks being carried out in the name of Islam throughout the world, not just in one region under one sect of Islam, but throughout the world, terrorism being funneled and fueled by wealthy Muslims and both from the Sunni side and the Shia side. So you have the mega groups like Hezbollah, Hamas, and ISIS. You have the offshoots of Al-Qaeda. And this is all coming from, think about Al-Shabaab. The list goes on and on and on, all coming from Islam right now in the current time period that we live in.
Sign that petition, aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. It's very simple. No indoctrination of Islam in school. Teach about it, fine. Indoctrination, no. ACLJ.org or 1-877-989-2255. ACLJ.org. That's ACLJ.org or 877-989-2255. Back with more in a moment.
Imagine your child or grandchild forced to recite the Islamic conversion creed in school. It's happening in Tennessee. Public middle school students are being taught to write, quote, Allah is the only God. Their assignments actually explain how to convert to Islam. It's Islamic indoctrination right here in our schools. It's outrageous and unconstitutional, but it's happening nationwide. Some students are assigned, quote, to pretend you are a Muslim. Others are taught to pray Islamic prayers and practice Islamic rituals. At the ACLJ, we're taking direct action. We're fighting to defend religious freedom in school and aggressively battling to stop Islamic indoctrination. Send a powerful message to these schools today. Sign our petition. Stop Islamic indoctrination in our schools. Call now, 1-877-989-2255 or add your name online, aclj.org.
Hey, welcome back to the broadcast, everyone. We're thrilled. In addition to our radio audience, our Facebook audience, our Periscope audience, we've got our television audience in studio. The cameras are here today, so we're thrilled with that. The Council of American Islamic Relations. Let me play what his spokesperson said, number 19.
We should remind a presidential candidate like Ben Carson about a very important document in the United States, and that is the Constitution.
Yeah, well, let me remind you of something also, CARE. Council of American Islamic Relations. You're an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation case. Little known fact. Then Mr. Awad went on to ask Ben Carson to step aside, number 22.
And we ask Mr. Ben Carson to withdraw from the presidential race because he's unfit to lead, because his views are in contradiction with the United States Constitution.
You know, look, I mean, First of all, that's absurd. Second of all, we don't endorse or oppose candidates for public office, but Ben Carson should not withdraw for a statement that he made that was correct. It may have been, it would have been, I would have worded it a little bit differently, but the fact of the matter is what he said is not inconsistent. Now, his opinion whether a Muslim should hold public office, different story. Although, if they believe in Sharia law application, I would have the same problem. And we're getting a lot of comments on Facebook and Periscope.
We just got a comment from Periscope from Christy who just said, I cannot believe the day has even come where we're speaking of Sharia law in the U.S. Sure. We got another comment also that came in from David, who just asked a question. He said, it seems like I'm always directed to sign petitions, but how effective are they?
Well, they're huge. I mean, let me give you, for instance, in this one right now, the one involving the schools, we've got 189,000 signatures on the petition, and maybe up to 190,000 now. In fact, I'm looking as we're on air here. And here's what happens. So we will take those. It's 189,000, 949,000, almost 190,000. We've won issues on these petitions. We have changed law because of petitions, and we got the schools in Tennessee to react because of this petition, Jordan, and that makes a big difference. And you've done that in Washington. You know the impact of the petitions, Jordan.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's how you take, outrage or opinion and put it into something substantive to deliver. So where, it can be difficult. You can listen to a broadcast like this, you understand the reach, but this takes it and makes it very real. This is the amount of people who took an extra step to get involved. They care about this issue, whether they're in your state or in your district or nationally combined as a number. These folks care, and it drives media, it drives attention, it drives, legislative schedules in Congress as well.
Comments are coming in from Facebook and Periscope as well. If you want to be a part of the discussion, not just a listener or viewer, you can actually interact with us during the breaks and during the show. Get your questions or comments on the air every day. All you got to do is go to facebook.com/JSekulow or on Periscope. Search for Jay Sekulow. We're live right now.
Let's go ahead and get Joseph or one of the team to pull up the Sharia law when it comes to women testifying. I think people need to understand this. Yeah, women can testify, but what is that testimony worth? I think you need to understand what's going on here. And as one of the people on Facebook said, the idea that we're discussing this, we're having to discuss this, shows you the nature and the scope of what we're dealing with right now in our country. So, look, I'm telling you, we've written a book on this. It's called Sharia in America, right here. I am telling you, when they say it is compliant with the U.S. Constitution, that's because they believe you can amend the United States Constitution, not because Sharia law on its face is compliant with the Constitution. If you want to help us on this, by the way, again, aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. Let's take a phone call.
Let's go to the phones. Eva is calling from Canton, Ohio. You're on the air.
Hi, Eva.
I just wanted to comment. First of all, I really appreciate everything that you do.
Thanks.
I love to watch you when you're on, like Hannity or the O'Reilly Factor. But I'd just like to know, where have we come to this point in American history that they're actually, like you said, talking about Sharia law?
Well, let's play the comment. Chuck Todd from, first of all, is there any Muslims running for president of the United States right now? I don't think so. So, again, not to be disparaging to Muslims, but this is what you call a question that has no foundation. Here is the first statement, and I want to answer this too, but let's play. This is Chuck Todd's question to Dr. Carson.
Should a president's faith matter? Should your faith matter to voters?
Well, I guess it depends on what that faith is. If it's inconsistent with the values and principles of America, then of course it should matter.
So here's the question, Jordan. The fact of the matter is, and you and I have studied this, and you've done graduate work on this, we've done this at Oxford, Sharia is not consistent with the U.S. Constitution as Sharia is right now. The only reason they say that it is, and the fact that Chuck Todd asked the question, is absolutely absurd. I mean, is this really an issue that's a major focus of the United States presidency right now? But do you believe that Islam is consistent with the U.S. Constitution? My answer to that is no, it's not.
No, it's not. And so you have the Sharia that's been politicized completely, and that is really what drives the debate these days, because that's what impacts non-Muslims. You could talk about Sharia in a personal way, in a way to guide your life. That's one thing. That's very different than setting legal codes, criminal codes, civil codes, family law, inheritance rules, punishments, which would be considered violations of the U.S. Constitution here in the U.S., like taking off limbs, like a hand, because of petty theft or decapitation because of a more serious crime, but still not even necessarily a crime like murder. Of course, the way women are treated, that's political Sharia. Sharia as running a government. And when you talk about that, it's absolutely not compliant with the way that we live in the United States and the freedoms that we enjoy.
I think that, and folks, I agree completely with that regard. I don't even think there's a close debate.
The comment coming from Cheryl, who just said, why don't they ask real questions like Planned Parenthood and foreign policy on these things? One person said, you consider this gotcha journalism, or is this just a case of...
Well, Ben Carson called it gotcha journalism. I think it's a ridiculous question to ask the guy. Because the reality is, if anybody's being honest and studies the subject, no, of course Sharia, as practiced by the people that are imposing it, as Jordan just said, it's a political Islam. Of course it's not consistent and compliant with the U.S. Constitution, but for the fact that they use a doctrine called taqiyya, which means you can basically get to the truth by lying. And what's that doctrine say? Yeah, of course it's compliant with the Constitution. Why? Because you can amend the United States Constitution. Understand that we're discussing this today on this broadcast because this is national news today. Everybody's talking about it. We were talking about schools last week. We're now talking about the presidency of the United States, and we've got thousands of people listening and watching all over the country.
That's right. As we do this live, we have monitors in our radio studios where it says what's going on right now on television with news and everyone.
This is the topic.
This is the topic of the day, which is what the comments were from Dr. Carson, also Mr. Trump, on exactly some comments they've made on Islam necessarily. And it's not necessarily a backlash as much as it could be a sort of a reverse backlash in a way where things, you think it's going to go one way, but people actually stand up and support.
You know what? I think the media thought that this was going to be a huge backlash against Ben Carson and Donald Trump. But you know what the reality is? Most people in America, no. Sharia law is not consistent with the United States Constitution. ACLJ.org or 1-877-989-2255. I'd like everybody that's listening to me right now to go to their phones or go to ACLJ.org and sign that petition to stop this indoctrination in the schools with Islam. ACLJ.org or 1-877-989-2255. That's 877-989-2255 or ACLJ.org.
Imagine your child or grandchild forced to recite the Islamic conversion creed in school. It's happening in Tennessee. Public middle school students are being taught to write, quote, Allah is the only God. Their assignments actually explain how to convert to Islam. It's Islamic indoctrination right here in our schools. It's outrageous and unconstitutional, but it's happening nationwide. Some students are assigned, quote, to pretend you are a Muslim. Others are taught to pray Islamic prayers and practice Islamic rituals. At the ACLJ, we're taking direct action. We're fighting to defend religious freedom in school and aggressively battling to stop Islamic indoctrination. Send a powerful message to these schools today. Sign our petition. Stop Islamic indoctrination in our schools. Call now, 1-877-989-2255, or add your name online, aclj.org.